MPs has claimed £2 million in expenses and employs his wife. That would be Nigel Farage. Another of your MEPs has been jailed for benefit fraud, described by the judge as, quote, a truly dishonest man. And a third MEP was said by the judge to have set out to defraud Parliament from day one. He's now doing 2 years in the slammer as well. Not exactly whiter than white, is it?
I think this is Nigel.
Yeah, I think it probably is aimed at me, that one. 2
How
million
did
in
you- how did
expenses.
you guess?
2 million in expenses. This is a story that's been put about after a conversation I had with Dennis McShane.
You said it.
Interesting that Dennis McShane should say that, given his own difficulties. I haven't had 2 million in expenses.
How
What
much?
I have had is £2 million since 1999 to employ staff, and absolutely none of that sum of money has come to me. So let's clear that up to begin with.
What about your wife?
I've employed my wife since 2007. She worked for me unpaid for the first 8 years. And since 2007, the burden of work was intolerable without some sensible help at home. I don't feel guilty about that. Incidentally, I haven't bought a second house in Brussels. I rent. I've avoided all of those things, and my expenses are lower than almost every other British MEP because I'm not in Brussels 5 days a week signing on for the daily allowance. As far as the bad apples are concerned, yes, we have had some bad apples in UKIP, but I would put it to you that in every walk of life, in every company, goodness me, often in families, you find a bad apple. The question is, how do you deal with it? And that problem occurred during the time that I was leader of the party, and I dealt with it absolutely ruthlessly, no questions asked. I kicked the bloke out of the party. And yes, these things can happen, but I'd put this to you. If you look at our 550 candidates and look at their backgrounds, we are not careerists in UKIP. We've got members of this party, we've got dukes, we've got dustmen, we've got consultant surgeons standing for us, we've got local school teachers standing for us, we've got ex-army officers standing for us, we've got a cross-section of people standing for us. They're all putting their hands in their own pockets, paying for their own deposits, paying for their own election addresses, and they're doing it because they actually believe in something. They believe that the best people to govern Britain are the British people themselves. There is less chance of UKIP people going rotten than there is those amongst the established mainstream who go from university straight into a research office and their only possible means of income is politics.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Daily Express. I know you say that a Conservative victory would be disastrous for Britain because they won't have this referendum, but if UKIP were to take enough votes to deny the Conservatives a majority and we ended up with another 5 years of a Labour government or a coalition between Labour and a very Europe-loving Lib Dem party, would you feel at all guilty, apologetic to the British people?
No, it's the only thing we can aim for. David Cameron has ruled out any form of referendum for 5 years. Now that means 5 more years of integration into a European Union, which now has the Treaty of Lisbon. It has its own legal personality and supported by the court. It can now do almost anything it wants. So already the confidence that it has is being shown. We can see what's happening to the City of London with the hedge fund directive, and as Nigel has mentioned, the whole of our financial supervision has now passed to Brussels. You can look at the Justice and Home Affairs, where they're already pushing forward the prosecutor. Cameron and co says we will resist the prosecutor, but we won't resist the prosecutor because they can use the arrest warrant to extract people to rot in a foreign jail for 2 years, as they're doing at the moment, as the Foreign Office said to me. And on any front you care to look, the Foreign Service, I can't believe we'll have a British embassy left in 12 years if we go on down this route of ever closer integration into this corrupt octopus in Brussels. We won't just have its tentacles around every area of our life as we do at the moment. We will be in its bowel. And that is why I say we cannot afford a Cameron government with a working majority. Okay, so it's a hung parliament. It's a period of confusion. I cannot believe the British people, whom I trust, will return a Labour government. It simply doesn't appear to me to be possible. If they do, then they will get the government they deserve, but I don't believe it. What we will have is a hung parliament, which probably won't last very long, and then we will be in a position to insist that at the next general election that none of the failed old parties can form a government unless they promise the referendum, which they promised, but which we've been denied. And above all, the prize for us is to get the whole system of binding national and local referendums, which on the Swiss model, which is the only way that the British people are going to reconnect with the power which has been taken from them by their political class over the last 50 years. So, yep, I never thought I'd say it, but roll on a hung parliament, because at least down that route lies hope. Down any other route lies the end of this country as we've known it.
Nigel? Can I just make a point about Cameron's position on the European question? We know that Labour and the Lib Dems are utterly committed to the project and vote for everything. So we sort of kind of think, well, somehow maybe Cameron's going to provide resistance, and some of the newspapers say that he's very Eurosceptic and he's made himself unpopular with Merkel and Sarkozy. Just remind ourselves that he's ruled out a referendum on our membership of the European Union because, and I quote, "I passionately believe that Britain must remain a member." So we're not allowed to have a vote because we might get a result that he doesn't like. This is the Tory leader who's undone the previous policy on the common fisheries policy. If you remember, in 2005, under Michael Howard, they fought the election saying, elect a Tory government and we will take back Britain's territorial waters. That's gone. He's now fully signed up to us being part of the ruinous CFP. And interestingly, William Hague, who is somebody who's often associated with being a Eurosceptic, said just 3 weeks ago that the EU must speak with a single voice on Russia, the Balkans and energy security. That means that this next Conservative government has accepted in principle a common foreign policy for the European Union, led of course by the redoubtable Baroness Ashton. And finally, the one Eurosceptic thing that he has done is he took the Conservative MEPs out of the EPP group and formed this new ECR group in the European Parliament, which people thought was proof that Cameron was going to deliver. What's happened since they've been there? They vote with the EPP on virtually everything. Over 95% of votes since they've been there, they voted with the EPP, and it was only with the votes of British Conservatives that Mr Barroso was reappointed. It was a very tight contest, only with British Conservative votes that Barroso was reappointed as President of the European Commission, the man who simply refused to accept the Irish no. So I don't see any evidence at all that David Cameron is any more Eurosceptic than the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats.
Okay, but on your fundamental reason for being, would you accept that whatever people may have thought of the Lisbon Treaty, if you were to get your wish of an immediate in-out referendum on the European Union, on the polls, you'd lose?
That depends how you ask the question. I mean, if you ask the question, do you wish to leave the political European Union and replace that with a simple free trade agreement, if that was the question, I think we'd win. So it is, how you phrase the question is very, very important.
Could I mention that on the Taxpayers Alliance latest polls on this subject, actually we'd win even on the in and out. But clearly, the way we would put it is, do you want to go back to what we voted for in 1975, which is a free trade area, friendly collaboration on everything else, but outside we want to leave the political construct of the European Union. And let me point out that that does not cost a single job or any of our trade, because nothing changes if we leave the political construct of the European Union and continue to trade with them. We are their largest clients. The propaganda that has gone into the subconscious of the British people from all the three failed old parties and the political classes, 3 million jobs and 60% of our trade depend on our membership of the European Union. That's absolute nonsense. There are indeed 3 million jobs which work to produce trade not only in manufactured goods but in everything with companies in the European Union. But if we've got 3 million dependent on that, they've got 4 million depending on the trade with us. So it's absolute nonsense.
So you're suggesting that people simply don't understand the argument?
Yes,
simply ignorant,
yes, yeah.
Ignorant,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes for business too.
Well, it does, but when you explain to a businessman, but hoy, what are you after? He says, I'm after free trade. That's all I need. I don't need all the regulations from Brussels that come with a membership of the European Union. Once you explain it to them, I haven't yet to find a businessman who said, well, I never thought of that. Yeah. And you simply have to see that the trade would continue. We are the European Union's, or actually all the companies in all the countries, we are their largest client. And it's absurd to say that we couldn't have an arrangement at least as good as Switzerland's, which has free trade, has free movement of persons, free everything. And it's absolutely a fundamental misunderstanding to this whole debate that in some way, if we left the political construct of the European Union, our trade or jobs would suffer. In fact, they go up because we'd get rid of the over-regulation, we'd be free to sign up with NAFTA, the Commonwealth Free Trade Agreement, we'd trade in the rest of the world, and actually jobs would be created.
So just finally, briefly.
To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.